Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Humans of Fintech podcast presented by Fintech is Femme. I'm so thrilled to introduce you to our guest today, the Tori Dunlap. Now, Tori is a money expert, best-selling author, multimillionaire, entrepreneur, social media superstar, and business leader who has paved the way for women of all walks of life to have better relationships with their finances through her company, Her First 100K. I'm so thrilled for her to drop some knowledge for our Fintech is Femme community. So let's get right into it. Tori, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so excited you are here. First of all, let's catch up a little bit. I want to hear how your visit in New York has been so far. What have you done? What's coming up?
I'm in New York all the time. I love it here.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to live in New York, but I didn't want to fully commit. So what was it, 2022? I spent like 8 weeks here. And I'm back in the same apartment for this trip that I was last time. And I literally watched it and I was like, oh, this feels like home.
Move.
So the goal is to have places in both, because I do love Seattle, families from Seattle. Right. Like I have my community there. And one of my business partners is also from Seattle, but lives in New York full time. And so we joke that like we need to somehow purchase property in both, which is
this is the dream.
Financially impossible, but somehow do it and then like co-own it and like finagle that. And
yeah. So, I mean, that's one of my financial goals is to be
bi-coastal, baby.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Or just like two homes. Like how do I have like a condo in Mexico City, which is where like my partner's family is and all of that. And then how do we also keep our community and home here in New York, right? And just throwing it out there, manifesting.
Hard enough to buy property in one city right now. And so I'm like, okay,
well New York
one city first and then maybe two.
I know. Will New York be the one? I don't know. That might take me my entire life savings. So we'll see how that goes. But what is maybe your favorite part about the city? I'm so curious.
I'm a theater person, so it's like any show I can see while I'm here. Yeah. If I don't see a show in New York, it was either I was only here for like 48 hours, or I did New York incorrectly in my opinion. Right. Brooklyn was actually the first time I went to Brooklyn was actually when I was staying here. Yeah. And I was living in Bed-Stuy, and like I always loved Manhattan, and I thought, as a kid, maybe I'll move here. And then I got into college and I was like, okay, this is too much. It's too big of a city. And then I went to Brooklyn and I was like, oh, okay, I could do this. Because it feels more community based, got bigger parks, or at least parks that are not just Central Park and you feel like there's people that you see, and so that felt a lot more comfortable to actually live in.
Yeah, no, I'm going to sell you a little on Brooklyn, because that's where I live. Okay. And I made the move from, a few years in Manhattan and multiple neighborhoods, and then came to Brooklyn, and I've been there the last few years now, and will be there another few as I just renewed my lease. And it is just that, I know my bodega guy. Right. I know the people running the coffee shop. Right. Everything.
I think if I were to walk into the bagel shop that I went to all the time in the neighborhood I lived, I'm staying there now, I think they would recognize me.
No, exactly. And so you get that level of community, which is just so important. So anyway, this is me totally convincing Tori to move to New York.
I do love New York so
because
much.
I'm here for it. I want to talk a little bit about your come up story, and largely kind of around, it's fun because just for the listeners, her dad is here. And so I hope dad appreciates this, but from reading your book and knowing your story, you have the most wonderful parents, and you came from an incredible background. That's what I can glean from, reading your book and reading your story.
Oh, and especially financially. It was like, I thought that was normal. I thought, okay, everybody knows not to oversave on credit cards or overspend on credit cards. And everybody knows how to, save money. And you don't realize, that that's a privilege until you start talking to other people. And I remember going to college, and it was the first time that I was like, oh, not everybody knows this. Not everybody is using a credit card responsibly. Not everybody is thinking strategically about okay, how am I paying for college in a way that's sustainable? And so, it just was the friend that all my friends were coming to, especially my female friends, for financial advice and guidance. And I still remember the day, my dad sat me down and was like, okay, here's what a Roth IRA is. And here's VTI, and here's what you invest in. Here's what that means. And so, I just grew up, because you don't know any different. You're like, okay, this is
everyone gets this, right? Yeah, right. Everyone gets financial education. Meanwhile, where you go to college, you're exposed to all these people, and you're like, oh shit, we have a severe financial literacy crisis here in America and the world, and it is crippling, and it creates all of the disparities that we see.
Yep.
And when did you one thing that I love about your story is that you just knew. Like, it is not, I don't meet a lot of people who have that privilege and go, you know what I should do? I have my abundance and I have my knowledge. I should share it with everyone.
Well, it took a couple years, if I'm being honest, because, we were just talking before I graduated college in 2016, right? It was like May of 2016. And I imagine something similar happened for you, but maybe as a woman of color, you've been on it for a while. But like, I graduated college and thought, was like, okay, I'm going to climb the corporate ladder. I'm going to do this. And then the rose-colored goggles came off and I was like, this is awful. And I'm working for men who were abusive and say weird sexual comments to me at work. And I was just like, this isn't it. And it was I just became very disillusioned very quickly. And then of course, in the 2016 election, we think we're getting our first female president and we get Donald Trump. And so, we're coming into adulthood and into womanhood for me in a very different country than I expected.
Yeah.
And that was the kind of moment where I was like, oh, okay, so what am I going to do about it? If I'm, 22, 23, coming into adulthood, what's my responsibility? And it honestly radicalized me. And it was also this moment where, again, all my friends are coming to me for financial advice. And I'm also realizing, when I have my financial shit together, I can do other things, right? I have the option to get out of that job I don't want to be in, or I have the option to, start a business or to donate to the causes that I want to support. And I say this in the book and we say this on the podcast all the time, but like, money truly does mean options.
Yep.
And especially if you're a member of a marginalized community, if you're a woman, if you're a person of color, if you're a queer person, if you're disabled, like, when you have money, you don't have to be in a situation that doesn't respect you, doesn't honor you, and doesn't make you feel safe, because you have the money to do so. You have the money to get out. And like, that's the feeling I want for every single woman in this, on this planet, is like, I am putting myself into situations that, respect me and that I feel good about, and that, feel restful and joyful, as opposed to like soul sucking or abusive or scary. And like, at the end of the day, I don't think we have any sort of equality for any marginalized group until we have that financial equality. Because unfortunately, if you want anything in this country, right, you have to have money. Yeah. You want healthcare, you have to have a job, so you have to make money, right? If you want daycare for your kids, or if you need daycare for your kids, right, you need money. If anything that you possibly need to survive at this point, you need money.
Late stage capitalism is really crushing.
It's crazy.
And we're doing great. Great things are happening. I mean, anyway, or consumers are being squeezed more than ever before. Right. The minimum wage here in New York is like a 6-figure salary, which is just, wild, right? That's what it should be to even survive. It's not, but that's what it should be.
Right, but you think like, 6 figures, that's a ton of money. But then you do the calculations, of course, what is a one-bedroom apartment? Not even a studio. What's a one-bedroom apartment in the city? Yeah, I mean, we can talk about this all day long. It's just like, it's when you truly give women more money, nothing bad happens. Right? Nothing bad happens. Yeah. And I think one of the lies we're told, again, as women in particular, is it's like the pursuit of wealth is bad. Like, you hear that all the time, is that, that's greedy. People who pursue money are morally corrupt people. And at the end of the day, money is a stack of government issued paper. It has no inherent moral value. It's morally neutral, right? And what you do with it is where morality starts coming in, right? We know plenty of people, Elon Musk, who are doing terrible things with money, right? Or just being dicks about their money. And then there's people who are doing really incredible work with money. And so I think that is one of those things where we're fed this lie that like, don't pursue money because it makes you greedy or it makes you a bad person. And my not so conspiracy theory is like, we're fed that to keep us behind. We're fed that belief, and we believe it to the point where, of course we don't have money, and everybody who has money gets to keep the money, and it gets to pass it down, and it just stays.
And they give it to their sons so that their sons can start the next company, and then they give it to them, and then they create this cycle. And I want to relate that because my audience is largely women working in fintech. They're business leaders.
And I was one.
Yeah, right. And they exactly. And so the feeling, and they're in these male dominated spaces, and whether they're on the business leader side in the C-suite or VPs, or they're, on the entrepreneurial side, they're still dealing with very similar, like, one, the toxic workplace culture, of course, but more so like the money mindsets that come from your consumer brain that enter into the work world. And even, what's beautiful about what I do is that I'm at a place where I get to interview the women who have gotten to the place where they're like, oh, I need to pay this forward. Like, I need to build a fintech company that's going to revolutionize the financial system and break it down and actually make it accessible to marginalized communities. However, that does come with a lot of, not only do they face like a mental battle of having to step into a VC room and not be thrown into a box. Right. A lot of my audience's pain points are, you know, they're female founders. They have an incredible company. Right. It's even at times, even when it's already reached this incredible like trajectory of revenue growth and strategy, and even like has a pathway to profitability, they go into a room full of investors, and you know this, and they're asked, but what happens when you have kids? But this seems like a social good. What does this have to do with fintech? I can't even tell you how many times I'm told that. Right. And I'm like, what? These are businesses that make money.
And meanwhile, there's typically straight white male founders out there named John. Yeah. Like, this is their like 500 fourth of them. Company. Yeah. And like the first two didn't go so well. Yeah. And they're just getting money thrown at them. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I mean, you were talking about, you know, women who have made it to a certain point in fintech, and, you know, immediately my brain goes, well, is this a glass cliff scenario? Right. And if you're listening, of course, and you don't know what that is, like glass cliff is this idea of, right, yes, we're doing the right thing. We're promoting women or promoting people of color, but then we're promoting them either at a time where we know the company's not going to do well, or we're setting them up for failure. And then we're like, well, see, this is why women can't run companies. Yep. And this happens all of the time, is they get the like accolades of yes, woman CEO or woman CFO or whatever that looks like. But then a year later, they're outed from the company because something happened. And it's like, well, that's not progress.
Yeah, no. Well,
that's actually worse.
Yeah, us hiring women to clean up the mess of the men leaders before them, and then saying
you couldn't do it, you failed.
Yeah, or why aren't you doing this fast enough? Isn't exactly like the. So I want to kind of get, because you've created a incredible business, right? You've created the revenue, you've created the reoccurring revenue, the profitable structure. I want to talk about some like practical tips you have for, and maybe we talk, you know, mindset first, because I can see it in sometimes the founders that I engage with and I talk to, and I'm like, tell your story, put your voice out there. I'll write it first, and then you go tell it, because I'll write it in my newsletter, and then I need you to go out there and scream it to the world, because what you're building is incredible, and I need more people to see it, because we need that high visibility. And then I need you to not be to not have that mindset of, oh, well, I have to just be a social good. I can't say how much how I want to make a lot of money. No, I want you to go out there and say, I'm building this incredible fucking company. Right. It's going to do great things for the world, and I'm going to make a shit ton of money.
Well, again, this is the narrative. Yeah. This is another narrative, is, again, we shouldn't want money either because like it makes us a bad person, or because we have created a society that punishes women who go after money, right? Like Elon Musk can sneeze and people throw money at him, right? And worship him. And it's like, unfortunately, we live in a society where there is this level of, a woman in power, a woman progressing who wants money. And I see it every single day in our social media comments. I see it every single day and in a lot of typically men's reaction to me, but also women, like the internalized misogyny from women. So really it's about what happens when a woman has money is she becomes uncontrollable. And I write about this in my book. Yeah. And if you are an uncontrollable person, especially, again, a member of a marginalized group, the patriarchy panics. And really, that's what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about patriarchal, racist, you know, the system that exists right now, right? And so it goes, oh shit, I can't control her. So I'm going to tell her she's greedy, and I'm going to tell her she shouldn't want money. I'm
going to tell her she's risky.
Right. So
her
maybe
business
that'll
is
shame
risky.
her into submission, truly. And so I think that we need more women unabashedly pursuing money.
Yes.
Because again, money means those options, and it means the opportunity for you to do really incredible things and to give people jobs and to do all of that. One thing you said that I really want to highlight is like, I am almost obnoxious about our business.
Yeah,
like,
I love it.
I talk about it all the time. Like anytime, like we're the #1 business podcast right now on Spotify. And like, you are going to hear me say that every single day, that we're at the top of the charts. And like, I do that for many reasons. One, to applaud our team that worked really hard to get there. Two, because if I am not my own hype person, no one else is going to do it for me. Right. So I think that that's one thing. And again, this is not women's fault. This is not an individual thing. This is, we're told, play small, be loyal, your promotion will come, your opportunity will come, and
that investor will come.
Right. Yeah. You need to be tap dancing all of the time. And like, it shocks a lot of people to learn, like, my background is in theater and communication. Like, I didn't study finance. I technically didn't even study business. And it's because like I am so used to hearing no.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so used to hearing no, but I am going to go until you either give me a yes or you say not now, and then I'll come back 2 weeks later or I'll come back 2 months later, or I'll come back 2 years later. But I think that one, just be obnoxious about your business, of course, in a polite way, but like you have to be your own hype person. Yeah. And then the thing that I have come up against time and time again in like writing the book and researching the podcast and having these kind of conversations is there are so many things that we as individual women are doing to try to change the landscape. But the landscape can't change for these individual women until the landscape actually changes. And that's like, no duh. But like, I think the classic version of this specifically is like, oh, well, women just ask for the money you want, right? Ask for a raise. And it's like, well, if I go in and ask for a raise, but the narrative is, well, I should just be grateful for the opportunities I have.
I'm grateful all the
that
time.
I'm not going to get the raise, or I'm even going to be punished at work.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with, women entrepreneurs pursuing VC, as it's like, you can have the best pitch in the world, but if you're not in the room that wants and uplifts and supports women founders, you could be, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And so I think that this is the part where, yes, there's so much that we can do as individual women, but like the system has to change.
Right.
These establishments have to change and realize that like investing in women is profitable.
Right.
And that the kind of support that we need, to your point about like, when are you going to have kids? Like the kind of support that we need is, all encompassing, because unfortunately our government doesn't support us much either. So it's like a whole dumpster fire. Yeah. But like that's
sounds more gloomy than it really is, I swear.
No, but like, I just
because we can change it when we are obnoxious about our successes, when we put ourselves out there, when we're like
also changing, okay, let's get more women VCs.
Yes.
So that there's not only
check writers.
So there's not only women who are, getting led into these into these rooms, but actually people who are there to listen. And so, I just always want to acknowledge too that like people who are listening to the show, I'm sure, are already doing the right things or are already thinking the right things. And a lot of the things that might not be working are outside of your control. And we do what we can to change the things we can control, and then work to change the rest of it.
Yeah. And, I think on the other side of that too is, one, also like the surrounding of, the people in your network. One thing I've been hearing more from some of the investors that I talk to, where I'm like, hey, what are we going to do about this?
They're like, nothing. I didn't think about it.
And they're like, well, like I gotta make the money. I don't know. I just anyway. But it's a lot of times, like the female investors that I talk to, well, one, they're like, I just have to show that I am writing the checks for winning companies, right? But even that, like it's that, even that, as we were kind of alluding to, when you're getting to when women are in positions of power, it can be even harder for them to want to bring up women, below them, if you will, because their scarcity mindset is like, I've already gotten this seat. And this reminds me, I remember when one of my, Sally Krawcheck spoke at my event last year here, actually.
I love her.
I mean, just love her. And shout out Sally. And she shared about how, she checked all the boxes, and she had one more like female VC she was trying to close, who like ended up passing, and shared that she didn't feel comfortable doing it because she's the only female partner at her firm, and if she invests in Ellevest and it doesn't work out, she's gonna get fired. And Sally was just like, well then, okay. I mean, Sally, she went off and got a bunch of SPACs done and like did the thing to raise her 50 million. Go her. But you know what I mean? It's this, how do we,
makes me sweat. Yeah.
I know, we're sweating thinking about it. I'm sweating. And but that's like what we're up against.
Right.
Is how do we, what's I get this question a lot from my audience. It's almost like a queen bee mindset. It's a scarcity mindset.
Yeah. Again, it's the one seat at the table metaphor.
Yeah.
And again, this is not on an individual level. It's just we're told, work as hard as you possibly can, right? And I can't speak to a woman of color's experience, but I know from, friends and our community is like, that's even more pressure, especially if you're an immigrant. It's just like, okay, you're going to come and you're going to work 2, 3, 5 times harder than everybody else. And then you're going to get in the room, and then you got to shut the door because you don't know when the rug's going to get pulled out from under you. And also, again, we've been told, okay, well, if you reach the top, there's only one seat available for you. And maybe there's a seat for a woman, there's a seat for a person of color, and that's it.
Right.
And so I literally start and end the book with the same quote, which is, when you have all you need, build a longer table, not a higher fence. And it's this idea of like, okay, well, if you're only going to get me one seat at the table, I'm just going to go build my own table.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to build my own table, and I'm going to invite a bunch of people where the table actually looks like the kind of company or the kind of country I want to see.
Yeah.
And that's how we're going to do it. But again, with all of this, hard to build the table when there's no supplies.
Right. Yeah.
When there's no wood.
I got no tools.
Right. I have no wood. I have no hammer. I don't know how to build a table.
Yeah.
So, I think that there's so much of, like I was just saying, internalized misogyny, even from, people who, identify as women or people who are women. Like, it's like, there's so much of that that's just, okay, I'm going to work my ass off, and then eventually I'll hit the peak of where I'm going. And then I have to push everybody else down because it feels threatening. Because it often is, because there's only one.
Because it feels that way. And I think one thing that I encourage is getting the mindset of and I actually have this written down, right? When you have, in the quote, I think in full, is when you have everything that you need, you build a longer table, not a higher fence.
Right.
And it's such a powerful metaphor. Did you learn this from Dad? How did you learn? Where'd you learn this
quote I just read it somewhere. I've really tried to attribute it to somebody. People are now attributing it to me, and I'm like, I wish I could have it, I didn't. But like, there was no, at least that I could find when I researched.
Look, it does good things, so that's all.
Yeah, but it was, and the second part is also really valuable, which is like, not a higher fence, which is like, I'm not going to gatekeep when I get here. I'm not going to throw up everything and say like, nope, you can't come on to this table now. It's like, it's very much, nope, I made it to the top of the mountain, and I'm going to offer you a hand so you can come up to it.
Right. So one of my mentors, she's the CEO of a fintech company. I was catching up with her the other day. She shares with me that she's a Black queer woman.
Cool.
I've probably exposed who she is now, because there's only so many. But she shared with me how she's like, I've literally fired people on the spot because they'll come to me and be like, look at my performance, I'm doing so amazing. And she'll ask, but like, what are you doing to elevate others?
Oh, interesting.
What are you doing to help our community? What are you doing? Because that's what she's looking for as like a CEO. That's what she wants to see in her, in her soldiers. And she's like, I can get sued for that, but that's the standard for her. And of course it is for her, given her experience and what she's gone for, and what that's like it needs to be like that sometimes, right? Like if you're not building something or creating something or performing at a level that's going to create a trickle effect, that's going to have downstream impact, that's going to lift others up and the ones that need it most, then I'm not really impressed. Like your performance, how nice. Right. How is that helping someone? How is that creating abundance for everyone? Because as women, we have to so many years of the systemic oppression and misogyny that we face. We eventually have to find it in ourselves to get out of this mindset of there's only this place for me, and if I help anyone else, then it could be over for me. Well, but instead, it's if you build more, it only creates more for you and everyone else.
The only thing that wins by you playing small is patriarchy.
Period.
Like, that's it. Like,
wrap.
The only done. Podcast over. But truly, like, the only thing that benefits from you playing small is the systems that already exist 100%. That keep you playing small.
100%. And I think my audience really needs to hear that. I want to also, so you share a lot about like toxic work environments in the book. We've got my team in here and stuff, and I just want to be like, raise your hand if you've experienced a toxic work environment. And I'm like, me every single time.
I think
everybody, everyone. Yeah. It is such a shared experience. But I want to. How do you've built an incredible team, from what I can what I can see, and all female team at her
now. Yes.
Yeah. First one HK.
Yeah.
Amazing. And how do you? Because even the most well-intentioned, humans, we're still human.
Oh yeah.
We can still bring in our old traumas into our workplace. We can still, my poor fiance is my co-founder as well. So, I say poor, like it's good for him, but also like, our relationship is really building on top of this. But even we have the best intentions for each other, but every time sometimes our past work traumas can trickle in. How do you kind of how do you kind of navigate that as you're building because what I love is that you have a business that's successful and it has feminism at its core, as its value, that the foundation you've built it on, and people in this industry think that is not a profitable way of doing business, and you have completely
I can say it is. I just like gymmed to the camera. I can say.
I know. Let me just say.
Yeah. I mean, running a business is hard.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dad. It's fucking hard. Like it's so hard. And I think when you've had these experiences that, worked in corporate before and had some good experiences and some really not so good experiences. I remember thinking, the first thought was like, I just need to get out. This is a waste of time. What am I doing here? Like every second I stay here, I'm not building the thing that I want. And I'm also like, it doesn't feel like I'm learning anything and like I'm wasting time. And then I thought to myself, and this is what I repeated to myself every time something shitty would go down at work, is I'm like, oh no, I'm learning how not to do this. Like I'm learning how not to be a leader.
Okay.
I'm learning how not to be a CEO. That thing they just did that made me feel awful.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with me or my performance. Oh, okay. Interesting. That's how I don't show up at work. That's how I don't lead a company and build a company. So that was one thing that just like comforted me, I think. One of the things that I'm always so hyper aware of is speaking of like glass cliffs, even in, very small companies compared to these like, Fortune 500 or big global companies, there is a certain pressure, I think, on women where we just don't have the same grace for female founders.
Yeah.
And without like getting super serious, it's one of the things that keeps me up at night is
same.
I don't think we're allowed to make mistakes in the same way. Yeah. We're not allowed to just have like a moment. And of course, anybody who messes up has a responsibility to make it right, apologize, do everything they need to do. But like one of the things I'm just most terrified of, which is both a rational and irrational fear, is just like we are just so ready for women to fail. And sometimes we sit and we watch with popcorn ready to fail. Like we're just like, okay, when are they going to screw up? And especially if you have any social media presence, it feels like that sometimes of just like, okay, I hope that you will have some grace because I am a person and a human being and I will screw up. Like that will happen. And so I think that that's one, I don't know if that's trauma left over from jobs. I think it's just the system that exists again of like, we give men chance after chance after chance. And it's often like we have gotten to the point where we kind of eat our own. Yeah. And that's a whole other conversation about like cancel culture and all of that. But
I know.
I think it's just really scary. It's like very, very scary to especially be like a public person doing the best she can to run a company when no one's taught me how to do this. And I like to think I'm pretty good at it, but like I mess up all the time. So I think that that's just one like really big fear. I think for me running the business too is I've only just started to understand we're a completely remote team. Most of our folks are based in Seattle, so we like gather every once in a while, but that was one of the things I really wanted to do was like, no, I don't need an office. Like we don't need to do that, but I do really miss it. It's like running a remote team I think is actually incredibly difficult. And I think now as with COVID and everything, we're only starting to understand that like, yes, there's so many valuable parts of remote work. There's also so many challenging parts of remote work. And I remember there was this one moment a couple months ago where I had just been realizing that like every time I would message, a team member and check in on something or ask for something, I think they saw it as like, where is this thing? Right? Because it's like the CEO descending from behind. Yes. Which is very funny because I'm very involved and we're a very small team. But I think it was actually another team member who told me like, you understand that like when you message them, they're thinking like,
oh my God, the CEO's.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, this is me passing your desk on the way to the bathroom. Just being like, hey, what's going on with that project? because I'm just curious and I want to help, right?
Oh,
and so it was actually, we're doing like leadership training and DEI, and it was in this workshop, and I was like, I just need all of you to know that like, if I have a problem, I will clearly say that, and we're going to have a conversation. I will be direct. Otherwise, if I'm just like, hey, how's that thing going? Or how's that project doing? It's truly me being curious, me seeing if I can add any expertise. And like, even that was just a moment where I was like, oh, because we're remote, you just get this Slack ping, and it's just like, hi, how's it going? Where is this? And it's like, you know? So I think that was one thing that even I didn't fully expect. And I'm really just now starting to understand of like, the benefits, but also the challenges of trying to grow a remote team.
I mean, I think what I'm getting here is that in order to build a profitable, growing business as a female, founder and CEO with feminism at its core, the value there is just knowing that everyone is human, right? And respecting that everyone is human up into the CEO, right? And it's like, you coming here and being like, the first thing you say being like, well, I make mistakes, and I'm just going to own them. That's huge, right? Yeah. That's something that's hard for women to do, right? Naturally, is be like, yeah, I'm human and I make mistakes, because we weren't afforded to be able to be that. We have to. Like,
my number one rule as an entrepreneur is like, done is better than perfect. Like, I have to get things done. They cannot and will not ever be perfect. And that is the biggest thing I see that holds women back, because again, if we're going to link it all back, we have been taught that perfectionism is the goal. That is completely futile, right? Because you can never do anything perfectly. So rather than do things imperfectly, we just bail. Same thing with investing, right? Like, I talk to women all the time. Like, I don't know anything about investing, or I know a little bit and I'm afraid of making a mistake, so I'm just not going to do it. Right? Same thing with growing a company. Like, the amount of people who message me and they're like, I've always wanted to grow a company, but like, don't I need a lawyer, and I need a brand color, and I need a logo, and I need all of this? And I'm like, eventually. But like, I threw a blog up with a name that I had just randomly come up with on a December night in 2016, and was like, cool, I've launched a blog, I guess. And then as I was going, I was like, okay, well, this website doesn't look good, so let me change this thing today, and I'll wait till next week to change this other thing. And yeah, if you go, I mean, you can scroll back to like 2018 on Instagram if you have time, and like, you'll see that these graphics are bad. Like, they're not good. They're really terrible. But I was doing the best I could with the knowledge I had at the time.
And with what you had at the time.
Right. And like, you are going to constantly iterate, and you're only going to know by doing. So if you think, oh, I want to start a business and I need to know everything I possibly can about running a business before I start it, you will never get started.
Right.
You could talk to Bill Gates and he still doesn't know how, whoever you want to talk to, right? About like how to run a business. And like, they're not going to be able to tell you everything either. So you just have to get started, then you figure it out along the way. And that is one thing that I'm really proud of, and how we work is it's just like, no, we're going to get things done, and then we're going to perfect them along the way, understanding that like perfect is never achievable. And I think the very small downside of doing that sometimes is that, there are some mistakes made. And so it's like, okay, we got to figure out how to fix those as we continue to progress.
Right. Well, and they teach you how, kind of to your point before, right? Like, ooh, that taught me how not to do that thing.
Totally.
That taught me how to not make that.
The Einstein quote, like, I learned 99 ways not to make a light bulb, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, we're kind of wrapping up here, but I do want to ask a little bit about when it comes to kind of that negotiating and advocating for yourself. And, like I said, my community of women, they're going on the biggest stages and sharing like, hi, I want to create this fintech company that does amazing things because it brings in women in marginalized communities into the financial system in XYZ way. Oh, and it's going to be like profitable by this, and this. And then they still face someone being like, is there like another CEO, or do you have like a male co-founder who like,
this is real, by the way.
This is actually what's happening. I know, because I talk to these women day in and day out, and this is what all of these things are just a combination of all the things that I hear from the women in my community. What is like the advice for them? Any strategies that you have found that are effective, especially when we're dealing with these like really misogynistic, like male dominated spaces, but to bring some light to that, there are so many incredible women in fintech.
Totally. And men who are incredible allies.
Yes.
Literally the two men who came to the New York Stock Exchange with me this morning are co-founders of a company that I have now partnered with to help women invest. And they are the two just most uplifting allyship kind of men, just two of my favorite people on the planet. So, I think one, like we were talking before, like talk about your business all of the time and never be afraid to talk about it. And talk about things that aren't going well sometimes and talk about what you've learned, right? Like LinkedIn is a great place to just share all of the time about what's going on. And again, you know that better than anybody. So I think that talking about your business all the time. Second is anytime you're negotiating, whether that is to get a deal, whether that's to get a raise, whether that's to, get a hotel upgrade. You're always thinking about like, what is the value I'm providing this other person?
Yes.
Like, what is the value that I'm providing them? Like, you know what you want, you know what the value you're getting from them is, but they need to know from you what is the value. And especially if you're talking to very data-driven people who don't care if you're talking to women or not, you have to show numbers, you have to show data, right? You have to show specifically, this is a good investment for X, Y, or Z reason. And I think with hopefully a summer of Taylor Swift and Barbie and Beyonce, we're getting closer to realizing like maybe investing in women is a smart idea.
$31 trillion economy. I mean, I don't know.
But it was really funny because one of the headlines I saw was like, I'm trying to remember who it was. Somebody was like, oh, Barbie's doing really well. We should make more movies about toys. And I was like, that's not the takeaway.
Yeah. Or people that are like, oh, we should make more, kids movies. It's a kids movie. And I was like, what? Did we watch the same movie?
Did you see Kate McKinnon?
Yeah.
That's okay. So I think that's the second thing is just like, just value, and understanding
I love that.
What is the motivation or what is the,
yes,
like, what gets the other person excited?
Yes.
Right. Like, that's so important to research. That is like an addendum to putting together the best pitch ever. Like if you can find specifically when you're talking to a VC, like what kind of companies matter to them or like what gets them up in the morning, right? And you can like watch Shark Tank and you can tell after you've seen enough episodes about like, oh, okay, Barbara loves like food businesses. She loves that. And she actually loves franchising food businesses. So like, obviously if I'm a food business who franchises, I'm going to go after Barbara and I'm going to specifically, showcase the things that are really helpful or that are really going to stand out for her. Right. So like know your audience.
Know your audience.
So helpful. And then finally, when it comes to all of this, like, this is like at the addendum to like talk about your business all the time. Don't be afraid to ask for what you want in terms of like reaching out and just saying, again, like on LinkedIn or Instagram, like I only had a publicist, I think, for 3 months when the book launched. Every other opportunity I've ever gotten, New York Times, Good Morning America, Today Show, like I have just knocked on doors again until they've given me what I want. And if they don't say yes, then it doesn't mean no. It just means not right now. So I circle back, right? Or just saying, hey, can I have 15 minutes of your time? Can I buy you coffee? Can I ask you questions? Right? Like, don't be afraid to reach out to the kind of people you admire. Or and even if it's like, I just really appreciated that post or I really appreciate your work. Like, that's how you network.
Yes.
I don't know about you, but I was told in college that like networking was like,
a weird
business
thing.
suits and shaking hands.
And you go to the room and you go to each one of the vendor booths and you like shake their hand and hand them your resume.
And network. And it's like, no, networking is just like a give and take. It's like, okay,
it's a relationship.
Yeah. And especially if you feel like you're the one with like less power or less influence, there's something that you can provide that person, right? If you're feeling like, oh, I'm going to reach out and they're never going to respond to me, like, what is one thing you can offer? Again, like know your audience. Oh, I don't know. They're for me, like Timothy Chalamet, right?
Yeah,
like,
I love that we're talking about him.
But truly, like the amount of people who like slide into my DMs and they're like, I saw this post of Timothy Chalamet. I almost always comment because of course I'm like, thank you. I saw it 4 days ago, but thank you.
I'm so glad when you think of him, you think of me.
Yeah, right? Like because like, there's a way that you can offer some sort of value to them. And again, we're like doing all of these. Yeah. All of these are the same tip in different ways, but like
this is amazing.
Don't be afraid to stand out. Like ask for what you want and always think about like who is your audience? What value can I provide to them? Either through networking or when you ask for opportunities.
I mean, so well said. Thank you. I mean, the playbook. We should host a workshop on that one.
Love it.
No. Manifesting the future. I thank you so much, Tori. I love this. I want to ask you the final question that I ask all of my guests, which is, if we need to be the change that we wish to see, what change do you wish to see in 2024, and how do you embody it?
want women to feel like they can not only unapologetically pursue wealth, but also talk about it. Mm-hmm. We will talk about any other uncomfortable topic mm-hmm. before we'll talk about money, sex, death, politics, religion. We will have any other uncomfortable conversation. Yeah. And that is changing. I can feel it. I think you can feel it too, but like not as quickly as I need it to. So like it doesn't have to be, what is your salary exactly? What did you pull in last year? It can just be like, I'm really stressed about my debt. Can I just talk to you about it for a while? Mm-hmm. Or yeah, I'm trying to get in these rooms and I'm trying to figure out how do I pitch myself to VCs and it's really frustrating. Or I got a raise mm-hmm. at work, or I landed this deal. Like, mm-hmm. let's go out and celebrate, right? That can be conversations about money. And so I think we just have to become comfortable being uncomfortable mm-hmm. in order for things to change. And exactly. they can be these little microcosm moments where it's exactly like talking with friends, talking with your partner, talking with your family, as talking with your coworker.
As Queen Gloria Steinem says, it's the day-to-day. It's right. the day-to-day actions. It's right. the what are you going to do today right. to make it different, to make the change.
Well, that's what we can do as individuals, right? What is right. the other quote? I'm trying to remember. What is it? Margaret Mead, I think, who's like, never doubt that a small group of individuals can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has.
Yeah.
So bingo, just small conversations about money and being open and vulnerable to talk about them.
Yeah, no, and putting yourself out there as well, which ties to all of the points you made. Yeah. Whether it's the way that you present yourself in front of a VC or investor, or the way you present yourself when you're negotiating for that CEO role, or it's the way that you're negotiating anything in this space right. is knowing all of those things. I love it. Thank you so much, Tori, for gracing us with your wisdom.
Oh, thanks.
And for dropping all of these incredible gems on us. I'm so excited for the audience to hear it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Amazing. Woo!
That went by so fast.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Humans of Fintech. If you loved it, be sure to hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.